Water, the study of martial arts. This has become one of my very favorite things. It is a open-ended, lateral thinking lens through which we look at martial arts. Sometimes one technique or moment, sometimes a fight, which teaches us something about the bigger picture of martial arts, sometimes the big picture, the micro, the macro. The best coaches that I've chatted with and the best fighters and martial artists, they all say the same thing. And this is true of people who study almost anything. That their fascination, first of all, to truly become an expert in something, you must be fascinated by it. You must be obsessed with it. And you can develop obsession, because people who just go to school and study chemistry and they kind of like chemistry, the more it is revealed and the more fascinating shit happens, the more they get drawn in, and before they know it, they are obsessed with chemistry. So the idea, and there is a lot of books on this recently, but the idea that you can only, first you must find your passion and then you must pursue only that is definitely one way to get there, and that's how I got here, being passionately obsessed with martial arts. But it's not the only way. By doing something that you find interesting and interesting enough to pursue, you can gain more and more attachment, commitment, obsession, deep meaning. You find meaning in the study of things. So please, and this is a little sidebar, but please don't feel like if you don't know what your passion is, you're fucked, because that's not true. Sometimes we know by studying. Sometimes we know by looking. Sometimes we know what our passion is by starting things, because passion is reinforced through the deeper and deeper study, and the revealing of more layers will connect you to things and create meaning in things. But so for me, that's martial arts. And to deeply study martial arts, like I mentioned, for a lot of people, they go between the micro and the macro of things. So sometimes you will be looking at just how people are moving their feet, and as you're looking at how people are moving their feet in conjunction to another person, suddenly somebody will work on a specific foot, a movement of a specific toe or edge or blade or ball of their foot, and you will become obsessed with just that. And all of a sudden, you're studying the micro. It's like, man, how does that foot work? What's the muscles of that feet? What happens when the fascia is presented? How does it connect to the rest of the body? How do you correct power from it? What's the history of that? How does other people's feet work? And you just get obsessed with crazy little things. And sometimes those come out in a 1 minute breakdown. That's part of the beauty. Then other times, you'll be on something like that. Just a left hook that's thrown only this way, from only low on the hip. But once you do that, you'll suddenly connect to something and say, wait a second, anytime the weight shifts like that, anytime the weight distribution between the feet is like that, what's going on with the hip? Hey, this all starts with movement. Wait, gymnasts move like that. And all of a sudden, you'll back out and you'll go really big. You'll go to the macro. And that'll end up for me in a breakdown or a chat on at one of my jobs where I speak in shorter pieces, and it'll also teach you something. So all of that is what's cool. And if you don't already look at things that way, whether it be fighting or some other thing, over time you will, because to study anything is to keep asking and keep peeling. And eventually what you do is you start thinking laterally, that if you hear music and you start to realize the rhythm of that music will connect to how the footwork works, and all of a sudden you've connected some lateral ideas. So that's all the nature of what we're trying to look at here. So what I'm digging into today is what maybe how Mark might label this, and he might label it differently, because depending on where we go, is changing trends in martial arts. Now, that starts, the reason that may or may not work as a description is because it sounds very shallow. Trends in footwear. Well, last season everyone wore tan, and this year people wear heels. Or trends in anything, trends in music. Oh, well, punk rock was big for a while, but now everybody likes to hear the banjo, But in fighting, trends happen sometimes for the same way. Or even the stock market or real estate sometimes happens this way. If everybody's buying, there's a trend where the market goes up. The second everybody stops buying or starts selling, it'll go down. Trends affect all sorts of things. The trend affects the behavior, and the behavior affects the trend. That's true in most things. If really cool people start wearing their hair a certain way, all of a sudden a lot of people do. That's a trend. Once that's a trend, other people wear it that way. Then too many people are wearing it that way, and then cool people wear it a different way. See that logic? Same thing. Everyone's buying houses, so we all buy houses. They go up really expensive. We can't buy anymore. Somebody's overstretched themselves. People start selling houses. People start selling houses. Other people go, hey, wait, houses are cheap. This is everything. Fighting's no different. So this conversation, the introduction to this conversation for me, and if you're listening to the long form, you heard me mention this off the top, started when somebody said, hey, and it was a brilliant, great question. And I really appreciate it. And a great observation. Great place to start a conversation. We used to see Superman punches all the time, and now we hardly ever see them. How come? Fucking killer question. One of the better ones you'll hear. And at first, you try to answer that on Twitter, but if you try, what you find is the information behind your information is deeply important. And understanding this type of behavior and trend is of deep importance. So we're going to try to dig into it in the best way that we can. So the short answer as to why we don't see Superman punches anymore, or very, very often. And yes, you can show me any one example of somebody throwing one, but our questioner was correct. You used to see it a lot, and you don't see it very much now. Why is that? The short answer is that it doesn't work in training. Okay, so that's almost always. And sorry. That's one short answer. Another one is it's not on trend. Okay? Now, and those two things work together, right? So if something wasn't working really well in training, but it was on trend that we'd all kind of been seeing it and liking it, we're all kind of excited by it, and this is what we all feel like doing, you might keep working on it, maybe develop it and find a way. But since it's not working in training and it's not really on trend, you're kind of just leaving it alone, right? Things that are not on trend, you don't spend all this time trying to find them, and it's not working in training. Okay? So you go into the gym, and when people go, well, bullshit with this, trust me, it's not working in training. I'm in gyms. If you are in gyms, you will back this up. If you are a fighter, if you spar, if you are training any type of kickboxing, or more specifically mixed martial arts with strikes, you know this isn't working. You try it, doesn't work. People try it against you. You'd way rather have them throw it against you than you try it, okay? Take that little moment in for a second. The Superman punch. I do not want to throw it because it doesn't really work, but I'd sure like it if you threw it because I counter those things all the time. So again, why don't I throw it? Because people counter it all the time. Why do I want you to throw it? Because it's easy to counter. Okay, so we start there. It's not used because it doesn't work in training. Doesn't work in training right now, and people are not using it in training successfully because they get countered when they do it. So then we say, why does that happen? And that's the next step. So the why does it happen goes back into how we're seeing fighting and what we know about fighting and how connected we are to it and the speed our brain is working. Once upon a time, the best way to get a double leg takedown was fire a giant overhand right. Get him thinking about that overhand right, and then we'd shoot a double leg takedown. Best way to land a right hand was we'd fake a big double leg takedown. When he would go to deal with it, we would throw the overhand right. See that work anymore? No. Why? It's one feint, but more, and this is something where you got to keep digging. Okay, it's a single feint. Single feints don't work that well. That's kind of true, but good single feints do. Any feint works. If you get me to think something is happening and then some other thing happens, that'll work. Harder to do it with one because we're all our brains, the brain of the fighter, the watcher, the analyst, the coach, the fan, everybody, our brain is seeing way the fuck more than we used to. You really think you watch TJ Dillashaw, and of course he's the extreme example, but TJ Dillashaw, fighters are way close to TJ Dillashaw today, all of them. Every fighter at a high level is closer to TJ Dillashaw today than they were to Tank Abbott. I think we all could agree with that, right? Tank Abbott could fake a takedown and throw a right hand. If he threw one kick at you, you'd be like, here comes another kick, and he would throw. So a Superman punch is if I kick you enough times, one is all it need. kick you one time. When the one kick hits, now you think a kick is coming, my knee goes up in that direction, and instead I throw a punch. But look how huge those two, the single feint and the action is. Same thing with the overhand to the double leg takedown. Like, they couldn't be farther apart. The types of feints that work really well are like things that are very similar. I did a Sean O'Malley breakdown on my Instagram today, at Robin Black MMA on Instagram. And his whole body turns, and then there's a turning side kick, and then his whole body turns almost exactly the same way, and then there's a spinning hook kick. But your eye is viewing shoulders, middle chest, hips, feet, everything, and it all looks identical except for the direction. Maybe that's not one feint. It's not like fake spin. It is everything stays the same and then one change. But that's not going to work for very long either, because we all start to see it. And as we see it, we know. You know that when a guy throws a fake kick to that, the amount of time it takes to do that is, in modern senses, 20 actions, 20 bits of information, one giant bit of information. Now, TJ Dillashaw would give you 12 things in that, and your brain is trying to inventory them all. So the speed at which the brains of the fighters are moving, the speed at which they're processing stuff's changed dramatically. Mark, you following me on this?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Even with, like, say, TJ, it makes it harder to telegraph because all the different looks, all the different feints. Say, for example, Sean O'Malley, whatnot, when he turns the hips, you can see it. You know, especially a high-level trained taekwondo can see that.
You see it, yeah. It's so, and even that one's not going to work for long. Like TJ Dillashaw, and I've used this. I used to talk about this at Fight Network. If we gave a sentence, I'm going to pull up this book. I'll just pull any page out of it. It used to be like the book says, "Hey, Master T." This is an old book about Much Music, which is our MTV kind of. I used to work there a little bit. Hey, Master T. That might be a step, kick, step down. Instead, you'd go, "Hey, Master X," and that would be the punch. And it would just be one slight change. But now, TJ Dillashaw will give you a paragraph. I always felt that I was separate from all the other VJs because the minute I walked out of the building, it was like, "Hey, there was a shooting at Jane and Finch." TJ will give you that entire thing. And in there, he'll just change one word. I always felt that I was separate from all the other VJs because the ice cream I walked, and that'll be the one word that's different, and that's where he hits you. So he gives you your brain is following and trying to sort through entire paragraphs of information, and then he changes only a single one. And then sometimes your brain will attempt, and if you go back, my old breakdowns, I did one of TJ Dillashaw, and I don't know what fight he was getting ready for, but I think it was on... It was him, a clip I used against Barao, and it showed the exact, and it's a classic where he ends up over here. And remember when, like, in their first fight, and he ends up way over here, and Barao's sitting forward, and he hits him from over here? He follows the exact same path. 1, 2, shift, kick, step, pivot, out, then this. And then 1, 2, kick, step, shift, pivot, and then the other thing. And it's so complex. That's how he gets you. So, yes, does a fake jab to a hook work? Yes, it does. Of course it does. But is your brain looking for it? Does it work way less often? Yes, it works way less often. And does a fake kick to a knee to this? Fuck, you see that coming from a mile away. If you watch fights, 20 fights a month, 10 fights a month, 1 card a month, you see it. If I see it from my perspective and you see it, and people will say to you, well, all you got to do is hammer the leg enough time, and then once the leg's sore and he's thinking about the leg, you throw the Superman punch. Bullshit. Because he's been in the gym for years where people did that. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. The fake's too big. It's too single. The fake thing is too large. It takes too long. It might take a half a second. In a half a second, the best fighters have made 6 shifts or moves or sent 6 bits of information. You got one. It just doesn't work.
Even recently in the Conor fight, Conor threw it and Khabib just saw it coming a mile away.
Habib didn't react to that.
Khabib,
Of course. Yeah. Khabib's not going to... Nobody reacts to that. This is not I'm not just making up shit. what I told you at the beginning, the entire purpose of this podcast is not to go and give you answers. It's to bring you along on the journey of finding them. Because if you just want answers from some guy in his podcast studio or on television, I'm not your guy. I'm not just going to sit there and authoritatively tell you, well, this means this because this reason. And if I do it even on Twitter, my thinking will then be, God, I wish I could explain that better. Maybe we'll go back to the podcast and I'll try to do that. Right? Because, people's reaction to a fake kick to a right hand won't work. People will be like, well, Connor threw it. Yeah, it didn't work. Did it? I mean, that's a great example. But most of the people that will have that debate with, if Faraz said that, my guys don't do that because they don't work, there would be people literally go, Faraz, I saw Shevchenko use it. Yeah. It's like, he's not making that shit up. He has, and I'm not saying Faraz has ever said this, it's just using it as an example, or Duke, or fucking, even somebody people hate, Artem. Mm-hmm. Artem says that. Be like, Artem's an idiot. He's the GOAT. Artem's in a gym where he sees 50 fucking rounds of fighting every day for a year. In that time, he's seen, 130 attempted Superman punches, and 8 landed, and 90 of them were countered badly to the point that the people don't throw them anymore because they get hurt in training. So they don't throw them in. That's just where it's at. That's where it's at. Why did that happen? Because how we see, the speed at which we see the game has changed dramatically. Now, there's many things that have to be added to this to really, truly be truth. And one of those is, it'll totally work in the future. It'll totally work in the future. The fact that it may or may not work right now has no bearing on September of 2021 when somebody fucking lays somebody out fully with it. And you know why, among other reasons? You know what the best techniques are? Techniques that you don't know and you don't understand. And the next best ones are ones you forgot.
Yeah, I'll give you a good example. You did a recent breakdown of it. I never thought I'd see an Andy Hug axe kick again in MMA.
Yeah.
Fucking happened.
Yeah, dude, that one's a little while back, but he fights for Bellator and he's landed them. And I think that one might have been kickboxing in a cage. I'm just trying to remember. But yeah, they'll land. You know why an axe kick will land? And I did that in the breakdown. Because it looks like something else. Mm-hmm. I fucking don't think a guy's going to bring his foot up here and drop it on your fucking head. And a Superman punch will work the second you stop forgetting about it. You know why it doesn't work right now? Because your training partners tried it, they all fail, and now you counter it, and you got to counter, and you fucking can't wait till somebody throws one. There's no way you're going to throw it, because everyone knows how to counter it, see it, process it, counter it. It's too slow, too obvious. And the fake to the movement is too large and too fucking... That I always think people still use the term telegraph. Oh, he telegraphed it. Fuck, we got to update that. Email, DM, telegraph is ancient technology. Anyways, that's just how some of the weird shit I think about. But yeah, everyone sees it. But once we haven't done it, none of your training partners have done it, nobody's done it for a year, 2 years, and they start to be other things that the fake low kick leads to that are very common. Fake low kick to spinning kick, fake low kick to different elbows. Elbows are hot right now, by the way. Elbows are big hot. Spinning techniques, big hot right now. What does that mean? Okay, so this was about trends to some degree. What does that mean? That means we're all fucking watching stuff. If you're a fighter, the only good fighters now are fighters who are deep in it. There's no other kind. No other kind. Deep in it. All day, every day. This is their life. They're seeing people landing cool spinning elbows and weird angle shit and spinning back kicks every week. I must have 5 just in the last 10 days. Yeah. Last 2 weeks, spinning back kicks, spinning hook kicks, spinning elbows, spinning back fists. They're everywhere. Shit, you want to get in on some of that action.
And more worldwide, too. It's
all over.
All the hook kicks are coming from Europe.
Yeah, all over. So you want to get in on that action. And as importantly, your training partners are doing it too. Someone in your gym is doing that shit. As soon as it starts working, we're all doing that shit. Now it starts to work. But you know what the next wave will be? The next wave of highlight, breakdowns, doing breakdowns of moments, guys are laying out people mid-spin. It's coming. right? Because what's happening, and again, this all anchors back to how you train and how you learn. This isn't and again, much like what I'm saying about the point of doing a long form podcast to try to reveal behind, it's the shit you're seeing in the fight is barely relevant to how people are thinking. That's the end result. But if you're seeing a bunch of spinning elbows and spinning back fists, you know what that means? In the gyms, there's shitloads. If you think it's cool, imagine what it would be if you were a 9-1 young fighter. Fuck, you got to try all that shit all the time. And everybody's doing it. But what happens? So one of the first things that almost always happens is an offensive threat is created. Something works, Superman punch, bink, lays guys out. It's amazing. Spinning back fist, spinning elbows, and these things have been around for a lifetime. They just haven't, people shut the door on them in MMA. But now that door is wide open. So we see the offensive thing. The next thing that happens is a defensive thing, and even better yet, a counter, where you make somebody pay. You know why nobody's doing fucking Superman punches? Because they get drilled in the face when they do it in their gym. And you know what's going to happen with all these spinning elbows? People are going to, and why? Again, because their brains are starting to see it. Fuck, you watch fighting. You see shit you never saw 2 years ago. You see feints, and you see movement, you see angles. None of that. You didn't even know words for it. Nobody did. Nobody was talking about any of that. Ranges fucking 5 years ago. Distance management, movement. This stuff wasn't discussed. Go back to 2013 and watch what fucking whatever excuse there was for, pre and post shows, none of that was in conversation. Now you know. So if you know, what the fuck do you think's happening over and over, day after day after day after day in gyms? They're learning and they're growing and they're evolving and their brains are changing. The speed of processing is changing. The way that they run routines and subroutines of studying and analyzing what's happening in the moment. Better at being comfortable in performance, so they slow the speed of shit, so they see things even slower. And all of a sudden, certain things that worked do not work. And then these other things work. But while these other things are working, everybody's doing it. The defense and the counter are being developed. So what's the date when we're doing this? This is like just about to be December 1st of 2018. Yeah. By March of 2019, I will have up at least 3 to 5 breakdowns of people who have laid out guys mid-spin.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Because this is what happens. This is martial arts. This is fashion. This is real estate. This is your job. This is technology. This is fucking everything. This is everything. And this is the most important thing that you can understand to be good at things in the future. It also makes your life a lot easier to manage and understand. Because you go, oh shit, the world is always changing. Okay, that's good. I get that. Okay, I'm comfortable in that idea. The more comfortable you get in that constant change, the more open to it, and then the more you see it. And one of the principal things we always like to do here, I'm waving at my wife because she's leaving, by the way. Mark could edit it, but this is real life. This isn't a TV show. Bye, sweetie. Love you. Bye, Pluto. My dog's going too. I'll see them tomorrow. And yeah, this is not a television channel. This isn't a studio. We don't have producers. It's just us and you. But this is our lives. This is everything. Everything is like this. What's the good of this and what's the bad? The good is once you understand that, change is so much less scary. Because if you're like, well, you're a 30-year-old fighter and you saw the days where an overhand right worked to a takedown. You saw the days where a low kick worked to a Superman punch. You saw the days where it didn't work. You saw the days where they said, always stand up when you're under somebody. The guard is dead. Then you saw the days when people are subbing guys off guard. You saw the days where spinning techniques didn't work. Then you saw the days they did. Then you learned the way to counter them. You get more and more comfortable with every change. And that's true of your life. I had a real job and I sung in a rock band. And then I worked in a television network, and then that one folded and I worked on the internet, and now I make 1-minute breakdowns and I commentate, and me and Mark have a thing, and now what's Bent Pixels is a company that we're going to work with because we like them, and that'll change and this will change and this thing, and it just fucking keeps changing. And you move to a different town, and but if you get comfortable with that, you also can see the truth. America is a wonderful place. America's a wonderful place. China is a wonderful place. Russia is a wonderful place. Korea is an amazing, wonderful place. I was in Seoul, South Korea. All of these places are beautiful. You see change. I may live in Singapore next year. This is not happening currently, but this could easily happen. We might move to Russia for a year. And these things are less scary to you once you understand this is everything. But what's the hard part? You don't get to speak with authority about shit. You don't get to know anything. So that's the scary part. And that is the fundamental challenge and why you need to have long form ideas. Because when you say this guy will do this and he always blocks this way and this, you're full of shit. This guy's the best striker in the division. Bullshit. This guy's been training for months. Nobody's seeing it. Everything changes. And we have to find these truths. We have to break through. These are barriers. These are plateaus. And as you're sitting there thinking, God, there must be a better way to be able to look at these things. But we're limited. We want to look at who's striker versus grappler. All of that shit is changing. Everything is changing. It is a constant state of change. And it makes it hard to develop expertise, because if you think you know a lot about martial arts, well, you probably know a lot about martial arts 5 years ago. Unless you're in gyms and surrounded by people and absorbing the most current stuff and people are sending you footage and you're training with them and whatever, you don't know what the fuck. You're full of shit. And we're watching it. We're seeing a fight that's happened today and we're like, well, that's what guys are doing now. Bullshit. They've been doing that for 5 years. It worked tonight. And it'll work for a few weeks and then someone will counter it and it won't work. And yes, Kung Fu works in it. And yes, you can do a spinning kick in martial arts. And yes, it is safe to do the can opener. And no, Muay Thai is not the only way to strike. And no, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not and no, wrestling is not the ultimate base for fighting. All of these statements were only true momentarily, or they'll be true again, or they used to be true, or they're gonna be true, or they're temporarily true. This is fucking martial arts. This is martial arts. This is everything. So anything that is spoken in absolutes, and I know that was just an absolute statement, so I'm going to even pull back on that. Most anything spoken in absolutes means that somebody doesn't understand this very conversation we're happening. Because always slip your head this way, never shift your weight that way, never overextend, always, all of that is fucking bullshit. All of those are limiting concepts. All of those stop you from progress. So this, I don't know if trends is the right way to label this, Mark. Change, evolving, I don't know. But this is the conversation. To me, this is the most important conversation in understanding this. And to me, it's the most important conversation in understanding anything. If you know somebody who's going to buy a house and something happens or it goes up or goes down, it feels tragic. It's not tragic in the fucking grand scheme of 40 years. Could happen again, double, twice the other direction. If somebody loses their job, it seems tragic. 10 years in the future, they could have had 4 other jobs, 3 of which they love more. Somebody breaks up with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, it seems like the end. In the context of an ever-changing world, these are all just blips, and they're far less scary and terrifying if that's what happens. So we're going to leave it there, and I hope this was of some value. Please send me a note somewhere and let me know. And if it isn't, I get it. Just stop watching. I'm not for you. That's okay. I understand that. There's a lot of people out there who will talk to you in the way that you want, give you the ideas that you want. Find them, and I wish you well. But if this is making sense to you, we're going to go further down this way. This is the root of water, the study of martial arts, for the next little while. We're going to pop up little aspects of it that are going to pop up along the way, but this is the lens through which we need to understand martial arts. Because once we do, we understand that 300 years ago, something that worked will work 4 years in the future. We will. And then once we get that, we'll apply that to our life in many ways. We're going to be good at everything. And if we aren't, we'll get better at it. So thank you for humoring me. This is a great pleasure for me, and it helps me a great deal. And if you do like my 1-minute breakdowns and some of my other work, well, the only way I get there is through here. So thanks for coming with me.